like to contact the show, send us an email at liveonfourlegspodcast@gmail.com or get involved in the conversation on social media. Join the Pearl Jam Podcast community group on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at liveonfourlegspod.
You know, I usually get pretty healthy on tour because the doctors and the scientists, they all agree that a bottle of red wine a day is healthy for you. Oh, a glass? Ah, fuck that. And away we go.
You're listening to Live on Four Legs, the live Pearl Jam podcast experience, featuring
Mr. Stone Gossard. Gentlemen! Mama McCready. Matt fucking Cameron in the drum. Mr. Boom Gasper. You can call me Al, you can call me Ed, you just fucking call me, why don't you?
Hey everybody, now welcome to Live on Four Legs, the definitive live Pearl Jam podcast. Today we go to an era that we don't cover very often in 2012. That's because they didn't do a whole lot in 2012. They toured Europe for a little bit and did some festivals and did kind of around like 10-ish shows. There's a few shows in there that are pretty well known, including a show in Amsterdam where a fan named Brian Farias got to choose the whole entire set list, and that set list is pretty legendary, and that episode was covered in episode 4, so we haven't really gone back to a lot of other 2012. The other stuff that they did this year were a couple of one-off festivals in the US. One of them that I was at, that I've said on this podcast before, my least favorite show I've ever been to, and Made in America in Philadelphia. And then I got DeLuna Festival in Pensacola, and Atlanta. We've done the Atlanta show, and I think there's like one other one, I think in like San Francisco or something like that. But today we are actually going to do the tour opener of this year, which is in Manchester, England, a place that they returned to last year, I believe, for the first time since this show. So we're going to talk about that, this show being a request from our patron, Matt, and we'll tell a little bit of his story and his experience of this show. Once again, another show where we're going to talk about a fan's first experience, so that's always exciting. Also, we'll get into tour openers and how that kind of sets the tone for a whole entire tour year and how Pearl Jam has done in the last couple of years when it comes to tour openers, because those have been fairly very good shows. And we'll even talk some night one shows. We'll talk about night one versus night two, because I feel like that's not a topic that we've discussed in quite a while, that we've kind of gone deep into. And I think there's some interesting things there that we can get to talk about. So let's jump on board with this one. Randy Sobel over here, Javier Havas over there.
How you doing, my friend?
Well, I'm feeling a little dolty today, but I think I'll be okay.
Sure. whatever that means.
I don't.
But I get it. I get it. Yeah. Do you have something in your head, Randy? Something inside your head? I'm just kidding. You have a lot in your mind. But very interesting topic of conversation, actually. Like, what makes a really good night one show? Like, what elements do you need? You as a fan, not like we're having this conversation here, you and I, me as friends, but what you, Randy Sobel, as a fan, you expect from a night one, if it's an opener or just like a 2-night thing?
So here's the thing. I think for the most part, and this doesn't always happen, I think there are situations now, like I went to the Fenway night one show and didn't go to night two. But I usually, if I'm not doing both nights, I end up at the night 2 show because that's just sort of how it works out and sort of been my history that way. But I think what happens when you have a night 1 is that typically you want it to be the tone setter because you know that you're going to spend a couple days with this band, that this is your vacation with them. So it's kind of almost like a marathon and not a sprint, as maybe a one off would be. So night 1 has to give you a little bit more of like an introduction into what's going on with this band and what they're going to present to you for this short stay that they have. So that means typically that night 1s would be fairly easy when it comes to like the rarities and stuff like that. Like you would get most of the sing along songs because you need to kind of warm your crowd up a little bit. And then night 2 comes down heavy hitters. Like I think the best example is like you'd open night 1 with a song like Release, and then night 2 you might open with Wash, because that's the difference between, okay, we got something, a lot of great songs in night 1, but there's always that what's next. And in night 2, you don't have a what's next. You need it to be kind of a finality. That's why the best night 2s usually have like a Ledbetter close, because you want Ledbetter to be your lasting moment of the stay. So typically, night 2 is usually the show everybody looks forward to because, again, you're kind of coming off of a cliffhanger with night 1. However, I am going to put this argument to the test here that a lot of the night 1 shows this last tour were better than the night 2s. And maybe even going back to 2023 as well, that the night 1s were, in a way, maybe superior. I think you can say that about a couple of shows.
Yeah. Well, the ones that come to my mind for the last run is Seattle for sure. I mean, we're not even have a conversation about feeling night 1 versus night 2 because that it's not even fair.
No.
Yeah. But going back to 23, St. Paul night 1. That was one for the books as well. And we have Vegas night 1. What else we have? LA. We have really good
Vancouver.
examples. Vancouver,
Yeah.
yep.
I would even argue Barcelona too. Remember when we did that Barcelona show?
Yes. Yep. That
Night
was a
2 was
pretty
very good,
strong
but
one.
right, night 1 was very, very tough to beat. That's a phenomenal show.
Circling back to what you said about what's the difference in between night 1 and night 2, I think a really good example for like everybody listening to, when you have that kind of like opening on night 1 with Release towards something else, the Wrigley shows are kind of like, we got that formula. Then night 2, we got Garden into Porch, which is a combo that nobody expected kind of thing, but it worked. Personal opinion, Wrigley night 2 was far superior than night 1, but I know that there's a lot of people out there saying that night 1 was their favorite because they have like maybe a more emotional attachment to it, or there were songs that they wanted to listen to, which is absolutely valid. But for me, night 2 and Wrigley was far, far superior than night 1.
I think another good example that I have to bring up, because it is still one of my favorite shows of the last couple of years. I mean, Philly has definitely succeeded that, but Chicago night 1 from 23. And I know that you were sitting next to me for night 2, and that's a great show in its own right. But I felt that that night 1 show was just filled with so many great stories and so many moments. It was a moment making show. And those are the shows that I look for. I want shows where I can connect to this band, where I can understand a piece of Ed that maybe I haven't understood listening to another show or going to another show. And that night we got stories about him living in Chicago and his grandmother's house and his aunt passing away. And it really felt like he invited you back into his home. While night 2 was like, okay, we told all of our stories. Now we're going to give you a rock and roll show. And maybe some of the performances like Marker in the Sand, Green Disease, while both songs that I was looking forward to hearing a lot, they didn't have like a story lead in, like something like Light Years or Throw Your Arms Around Me had. And those are the moment, like you'll remember those moments because they were special. The guy that lived in his grandma's house currently, that was in GA, and it was a very heartfelt moment. Like, that's something you remember. And I think like those are the takeaways for me, because like good performances are always great. And I think that also I always felt like the Chicago stuff was always split, because some people do like the moments, and then other people want a show where it's just like, hear the songs and just blaze through the set. And both are good, both are fine. I think it's amazing that this band, and any band, if any band can do this, can have two different identities for a show in the same location. That is something pretty special.
And I totally respect when people feel more attached to the story and the song. But like you said, it's just so cool just to see a 2 night stay in a city, and then you can see bands that they're going to invite you to their memories or places that were special to them. And then they can maybe share something like, for example, I remember night two when Ed was telling the story about how powerful was the impact that one of their favorite TV shows were using one of their songs. And I think the story goes right. They didn't know right away, which present tense makes the perfect ending for that
Yeah.
TV show. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about The Last Dance, which is about probably one of the greatest athletes we have ever had, which is not LeBron James, it's Michael Jordan, just in case.
It's not
But
Luca. Everybody's talking about Luca Doncic. Like, I know
nah.
nothing about the NBA. I haven't watched the NBA in a long time, nor do
um,
I care to.
yeah, but it's pretty cool to dig into those things. And just, I'm always so blown away when you hear stories from people that you meet on the road. Like, they really share with you something that is important to them. And maybe it was not the song itself, maybe it was the story before that, because it has a special meaning, or maybe open some sort of memory that made them feel more connected with that moment, which is, this is why we're here. This is why we're recording this tonight, you know?
And I'm glad that we're talking about this right now, because I think that a lot of what this show is a night one show. And especially because it's a year opener, not just a tour opener or a leg opener. It's the opener for the whole entire year. So it's setting the tone for what the next month and a half of shows are going to be. So in this show, it's not a story show. He doesn't have these moments where he's like seriously making an effort to connect. And it feels more like, okay, let's make sure we have this down. Let's make sure that the songs sound good, that we're tight, that everybody's got the right changes and everything like that. Like, it's like a don't fuck it up show. And sometimes in those instances, it can push back some of what the stories are. And I can't say I've listened to night two of Manchester to know exactly what happened there. I think from our patron Matt, that we're going to tell a story in a second, I think he said like that's the one that people kind of take away from it, and that's the show where the one time only that they did Hitchhiker, so that's what people remember it for. But listening to this show, it didn't feel like Pearl Jam really let you in as much as they have, and that's like, I guess, again, going forward 11 years to that Chicago show, they now have maybe changed their dynamic of what a night one can be. And maybe that's just kind of what it is now, is that like night one has turned into the story night and night two has turned into the rock show night. And I think that's a good balance between the two. But then you have like, I mean, am I wrong by saying that the Philly show from this past year, the night one between the night two, might be the biggest discrepancy between a 2 night stay in the history of this band?
No, I think you're totally right. Like, even though that these guys are like superb live, how can you beat the spirit, like that crowd? You just can't. I mean, regardless of the night two that you're gonna deliver, you're not gonna get even close. It was the perfect storm. Like, all the perfect elements were combined just to create the perfect storm, and that's why you get in Philly night one.
Yeah, Monday shows are tough too, because if people are traveling, they're traveling to the Saturday show. I mean, I talked to so many people that badly wanted Saturday night tickets because they weren't going to be able to go Monday. So it probably, maybe in a sense, had like less hardcore fans there, or like Saturday people felt like they could let loose a little more, maybe drink a little more, have more time before the show to drink. instead of like coming back from work or something like that. So it's a different dynamic for sure. But I think let's transition a little bit into just tour openers and what they could be. And like I was saying, it felt like this show is kind of like a step back in to make sure, all right, are we good? Everything good? Make sure the songs sound good. And here's a couple of rare performances here, but again, like not a lot of stories intertwined. And I just bring that up because actually going back to the last 3 years of tour openers, we've been pretty lucky getting a very solid selection because Vancouver from this past year I thought was fantastic. And when you have that opener show being the show with all the brand new songs, I think the takeaway is going to be positive no matter what, unless the songs and the performances are not up to standard, which Vancouver they very much were. But then you have the St. Paul show that you went to, and right from the jump, the first song of the year that they play is fucking Indifference. So that is notable and that sets the tone perfectly for a show that anything can happen during. And even the show from 2022 that starts out in San Diego, like that's a hell of a place to start because that's a hometown show for Ed for sure. San Diego shows have been so important over the years. And that's a great story show telling basically the story of the band through Ed's time living in San Diego. So they've definitely made a conscious effort to start off bigger, I think, than in the past, if that's fair enough for me to say.
Yeah, the San Diego one was like a Matt Cameron home show too, but
Sure.
the analogy that you're explaining it is just makes perfect sense to me, and I think it will make perfect sense for everybody listening because we have been pretty lucky. Like we have had really good openers. I still remember my surprise when I was in St. Paul, and I was like, "Are they playing? They're opening with fucking Indifference? What is going on?" But yeah, it's one of those things that I think right now they have evolved to having a better management of like, okay, we're starting this, we have rehearsed, this is something that we can do. There's a few hiccups in the show that I think we can talk later on, but I agree with you. I think this is a show kind of like, okay, we're going to test the water. We haven't played in 7 months and we're going to figure it out as we go.
Also the tail end of Backspacer too. So you have to think that in their heads, they're starting to think new record. They're probably laying down some tracks already. So, this is really the last time, kind of like in 2023, that was the last time that Gigaton was going to be prominent. This would be the last tour where Backspacer would really be prominent as well. All right, let's take this moment to share the story of our patron, Matt Davis, who requested this show for us to do. And it's amazing because we say this every time that we take a request is that we end up taking requests of shows that I don't think we'd manage to get to. Because again, I would have thought to get to night 2 quicker than night 1 because that would have wiped Hitchhiker off of our books and gotten us to talk about Hitchhiker, which we've never done before, and that would be the only time. So I wouldn't have thought to go to the first night, but that's why their requests are so important. And when we get to the encore break, we'll talk a little bit more about that and how you at home can get your requested episode to be featured on this podcast. And that's important to us. So telling everybody's story is also important to us, and that's what I'm going to do for our friend and patron Matt right now. This was my first Pearl Jam show, which is why it's so special to me. I was still in my infancy as a Pearl Jam fan, having only recently watched the PJ20 documentary and started paying attention to their album catalog post-verses, and I was liking what I was hearing. I remember the day tickets came on sale. I'd been working a night shift and didn't get home until 6 a.m. I really wanted tickets, and I knew they would sell out fast, so I managed to stay awake and was lucky enough to get them very quickly once they came on sale at 9 a.m. At that point, I was so excited that I couldn't sleep. I went with my wife at the time, and our seats were in the back of the arena, slightly on Stone's side. The atmosphere was amazing pre-show, one of the best I've ever experienced, which is not something you always get in the Manchester Arena. I really wanted to hear Release, so I was happy when they opened with it, and I felt very lucky to get it as an opener on my first try. I think the whole set had a lovely pace to it, especially the second half of the main set. Being a huge 10 fan, I could not have hoped for a better first show, with 7 tracks being played in total. When Ed came out for Encore 1, he gave a speech about 2 of his friends getting married and then dedicated Just Breathe to all the newlyweds. We had just recently gotten married, so that felt like a really nice touch, and it made it feel really personal to us. Insignificance, Immortality, and Black were all massive highlights too, along with Jeremy, which took me by surprise late in the show and set the crowd on fire. This feels like a bit of an underdog show when compared to a much more exciting night 2, but as my first ever show, I'm very glad that this is the one I went to. Well, I appreciate that you're bringing this one to the table yet again, Matt, because we definitely would have passed this up as an afterthought. And again, we haven't covered a lot of 2012. That Amsterdam show that I mentioned before was just one of them. We covered that Atlanta show. We covered Copenhagen. And there's one other. I think it was Sweden. I think we did Stockholm. And that's it. And there are probably about like 13 or 14 shows from this year. So getting to go to kind of uncharted territory is what we love to do, and make sure that everything is covered and make sure that not just Matt's, but hopefully you out there that went to this show, that your stories are being represented as well, which is why we are starting exactly where Matt suggested with the opener of this show. Surprise, surprise. I hate that I have to make this joke because it's not really a joke, but more often than not, release is the one to kick you off, and that's exactly what happens here.
I see the world beyond the chill. Which way to go? Window still. I see the world on a rocking horse of time. I see the words in the rain.
I noticed right away that this version, the crowd is just humming along with this, and it kind of creates this buzz where you can feel the crowd's presence, and they help lift the band in those big crescendoed moments. And I'm wondering, again, because of sort of the idea of what the tour opener is, you haven't been on the road in 7 months, and you're going back to a place that you really don't play very often. I wonder if that was something while taking the stage, maybe there was a little trepidation or something like that, and a crowd like that does something to raise your eyebrows might have been the thing to get something extra out of the band. And I'm sure that there's no lack of confidence, but the crowd definitely bolsters the performance, and it feels like they get comfortable right from the start.
Yeah, and I think they're going to appreciate that little help, that little lift that you mentioned, because I'm assuming that it must be tough just to get back on the road and to go through all these emotions and being back with your band of brothers and just playing again. But yeah, from a technical standpoint, I really like how Jeff sounds in Release. I think that the harmonics on this version are pretty good and pretty prominent. And I think Jeff overall in this recording has a pretty good show. But it's a really good starting point, and I know that it's a common thing to get released on your night 1, especially if you're opening that leg, but it's always going to be welcoming, and especially when you have stories like we shared before, it's even more meaningful that that's the song that they were expecting and they get it on night 1. It's pretty cool to hear.
Was that your first song?
Yes, it was 2005 release.
Same as 2008.
Yep. And magically, I will never forget, because as soon as Stone starts to play the first chord, a very light rain started to fall. So it was pretty magical.
Yeah, gotta love that. I just remember the purple light that was scanning across the GA on the floor. And it was just kind of I felt like maybe I was levitating or something like that. It was
Yep.
the religious experience that I don't get from a temple, church, or mosque, to put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So the next batch of songs here, we get from Evolution to Corduroy to The Fixer to Given a Fly. I think the topics of conversation here are going to be about Corduroy and Given a Fly, but I will say in Evolution that it's not a normal number 2, so kind of fun to come out of that and have that big burst of energy. And also, you mentioned Jeff. I thought that Jeff sounded fantastic in the show as well. He's mixed really well. And for Evolution, I love that bass line. Yep, it's not a Jeff written bass line, it's a Stone written bass line, but it's my favorite one in the Pearl Jam catalog, maybe. That bounce is just pushing the song along, and it just makes for a really fun rendition of this. But I think Corduroy was the one that's like, oh, all right, let's break out here. If we were stuck in a cage, if we were stuck in our shell for 7 months, let's just break out and shove this one down their throats. And the highlight is anytime that Matt is transitioning into a new chord sequence, because everything, and I mean everything in this song is a filthy fill. So the intro is needed, and I got you over here that's like your favorite thing in the world.
Yes. Just I don't get why people don't like it. Honestly,
I don't know, but I think maybe this will change some of your minds, because this version of Corduroy is just that good from the machine that we know as Matt Cameron. So take a listen and get the intro. Fails.
like that around this time they were always they will start you with something that is not that hard, but then it will melt your face with 3-4 in a row. And I think this follows this. And Corduroy going into the Fixer, it gets you that, and it's a really good version. Although something that we were talking before too, Mike doesn't feel very prominent when he's soloing, but that's something that it's maybe because of the choice of mix that they were using around that time. But that was kind of interesting to listen to, because you expect to listen to a little bit more the left side of the headphone, and in this case we didn't have that.
It's prominent on a lot of songs in this show. A lot of the big songs where Mike is supposed to be out front, you'll notice that really puts Stone in a good position in this show, because we'll get to stuff like Even Flow and Porch where Stone takes over, and it could just be due to the sound that's prominent in this, or it could just be due to Stone just felt like taking over, and that's why we got what we got. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Now, there is a Mike topic that needs to be discussed with Given a Fly, because when watching the video for this, he's using a guitar that I was very unfamiliar with him using prior to this moment, and apparently it's pretty rare. So what do we have here?
So around 2011, 2012, and 2013, Mike was really pushing for the use of P90s. So in this year, the guitar that we're looking at here is a Gibson Firebird 3 non-reverse body, specifically in 1965. This guitar was used up to 2013, and it was used at the songs that he was playing in open D. For example, Brain of J, Present Tense, Given to Fly. But I think it was a decision based on the kind of sound that he was looking for too, because when Lightning Bolt was released too, I remember, if you guys remember those little like snippets and videos that we were getting to promote that record, there's one that he says like, this is the sound that I'm looking for, this is where I'm like driving towards, and it makes sense and it matches. But it's a guitar that is rare because we haven't seen a lot of Firebirds. There's a lot of Firebird that it was very, very used in 2013 that is kind of like a navy blue one. But after that, they kind of disappear. But it matches for what he was looking for around this time. And again, it's one of those rare things that he's probably sitting right now in the storage room and waiting to be used, yelling, pick me, pick me, pick me, like Ed said.
The dogs, yeah. We get some big Eddie chants after this section, and then Ed says, oh, they're saying hello to Stone. So Stone is Manchester. Manchester, this is Stone. I'm asking you how you're doing, but I mean that as a collective. We really mean that as individuals. It's good to see you, and we're wondering how you've been. And then Ed mocks somebody who I guess is making this gesture. He's saying, it looks like he's saying, I'm good, but a few months ago I was having a tough time, but I'm better now. Like, how do you get that from somebody that's a certain distance from?
I don't know. Maybe the wine was pretty good that night, but he was very specific about that. So I mean, that's a good catch.
He was very into the bottle that night for sure, no doubt about it. And then he just follows that and he says, us two. First time we played in Manchester was February 1992. We played 10 songs because that's all we knew. We know more than that now, and there's more people here now. So thank you very much for welcoming us back to the UK. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. And then we get Pilot and Even Flow. Good section, small town. I think at the end, I noticed that the crowd, when they were doing the Hearts and Thoughts, they totally laid out for them and just let the crowd just kind of go off for 2 measures or something like that. And I like when that happens because it's just like, okay, this is your spotlight. We don't have to give you any backing band for this. Like, we want to listen to you. So it was a good moment for that and showed that the crowd was definitely pretty hot early on. We can get Pilot here in too, because remember we had a conversation about Pilot a few weeks ago when we did, I believe, the Minnesota show. Well, the thing that we brought up in that version was that it kind of fell a little flat because we didn't get that obeys, listens, kisses, loves. And that is such a unique aspect that makes the song specific to the song and special. And in this, we have that. And Ed is specifically doing it. So when you have that aspect, it feels like you can actually sing along to the parts that you know. It feels recognizable. And I get it. The 5th version compared to the 21st version, they're going to have it down a little more. But again, 21st version in 2012, that's what, 14 years after it came out? They don't play it a whole lot, but I thought they acquitted themselves pretty well on this.
Yeah, that's one of the things that the song needs, just to maybe catch your attention a little bit more. But like, I agree with you, and I think the crowd will engage with this, and especially because it's a song that hasn't been played a lot live. It's pretty cool to get one of those in night 1 too. That they're kind of like, okay, we're warming up, but we're still gonna give you one of those in between, just to transition before the big one comes next.
Now, let's go back to that conversation we were having a minute ago about the difference between what was coming through on Mike's amps and what was coming through on Stone. Because Even Flow specifically, I thought that Stone was so prominent during. You hear his riff, and I mean, the riff feels like the main part of the song. It's that bit where he does that dum 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 dum, and that carries the whole entire pace of that. And it's also like very crunchy, metallic sounding. So expand on that thought that you were just talking about.
Well, as you guys know, 2009 is not one of my favorite times in life to talk about this band. I think 2012 is a little bit of the hangover towards that. There were some changes going on, but I think when a band abuses mids, you lose the high end, you lose the low end. And I don't think there's an issue with the volume. I don't think there's an issue with the pedal or anything like that. It's just what he decided to use around this time. It is not about the amp itself, because he was using the Empire 63, he was using the satellite hits. Those amps are bright, so you're gonna get something behind it, but it's just his mix is so focused on mids that it doesn't go through. You get a little lost in between everything else, and I think it is the main issue, because this is the part where he's going to get in your face. He's going to be absolutely in front of everything, and you don't get that here. And the Stone is the one that you're like, ooh. And it's not about a volume, like I said before. It's just the fact that what he chose is just not cutting through. And it's an issue that it was fixed after the fact, 2013, 2014, but in this year, it becomes a thing. If you start to listen to a couple more boots, and you're going to notice that it's a prevalent thing around this time.
All right, well, Ed says that one is Mike on the Fender Stratocaster, and this here is a Fender Telecaster to get you into Unthought Known, and Nothing Man to follow that up. I was listening to Mike specifically on Unthought Known and felt like maybe he kind of changed up his parts. I didn't specifically recognize what he was doing as being like his normal contribution to the song, and sometimes really early in a tour, they get this like, okay, we've played this song for a while now, so why not just do something a little bit different, kind of change up the part a little bit and see if it works. I think, sometimes that opener show can also be like a test monkey to see if something is going to work for the year. I don't know if you got the same thing that I got from Unthought Known, but I thought that Mike's parts were just a little bit more like whimsical sounding in this, instead of like the standard put together sound that Unthought Known usually has, because it's a very unchanged song. It's one of those solos where Mike just does what he does, and it never really wavers from that.
Yeah, I agree. I remember that when I was listening to this, I felt that he was trying to kind of like follow along with whatever Ed was doing too. Yeah, it was like a more like upfront approach. Like you said, it doesn't have that structure that he used to follow when he plays this. So I thought that it was interesting though, because it will give you maybe a different perspective of a song that you have heard before, which is something that is very interesting, especially in a night one. Like when you get this kind of track in a night one, it's going to make you like, huh, this is different,
And Unthought Known we're getting into Lightning Bolt territory in a year from that point, and Unthought Known was absolutely going to be the song that's like, all right, let's take this further. Let's take it further into this era. And when you look at the songs that they played at this show, Backspacer wise, I think they play a total of 4. It's all songs that would continue on into Lightning Bolt. The Fixer will get played enough. Got played all the time, as people might know. My stories of it, that doesn't matter in here. And then Just Breathe. So those are the 4 holdovers from that record that get used for the foreseeable future. We're not at this point getting any versions of Johnny Guitar or Force of Nature or Speed of Sound. Maybe little bits here and there and one-offs, but they are pretty much kind of set in stone for what's to come and later on when we have a new album out. So Nothing Man, to follow up on that, I love a good mid-set Nothing Man. I think sometimes you just need to cool things down a little bit and bring some feel-good energy in. And there's 2 different sides of Nothing Man when it comes to later versions of it. You either have a version where they want to tell the story and they focus on the story, or a version where it's very specifically Ed wanting to get everybody together like a small town and do a big sing-along. And this version was the kind where it felt like a storyteller's version of Nothing Man, which I appreciate a lot more. The pandering stuff is fine, and pumping your fist with the crowd, and that's all fun and good, and it makes for good moments for sure. But when the crowd is just naturally on it, when they know their role, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do any of that stuff to make the song sound good.
But in the past is slow and sinking. Caught a bolt to lightning. Curse the day he let it go.
it's simple. The best versions of Nothing Man are the ones that come naturally, and I felt like this one did a phenomenal job of that. All right, the quote-unquote rarity section, I suppose, here would be Half Full and Insignificance. Now, Ed intros Half Full as being about politics in America, half full of shit, he says, and then once that moment comes in the song, he screams it and then does that big, what the fuck line, as if he knew what would be to come 13 years later, but that's another story for another time. Now, what did you hear from this version of Half Full? Because obviously, again, this is one that Mike should be very prominent on, but I feel like you have some good things to say about this.
Yeah, this is a really good example of a band that didn't have maybe the sound that we're used to it to work with, and they still grab what they have at that point and they just make a really good version. And what I'm trying to say with that is, if you guys notice, like the guitars are not super beefy, or it's nothing like rock concept like we have it right now, but the band as a whole, like they really highlight this version and like they make it work with what they have, and they make it sound bluesy, they make it sound heavy without the need of a lot of flashiness, which is this is like a showstopper for me in this show, so I always gonna have it like in a super high regard.
That's a showstopper, as you said, to one that like I hold in such high regard, being Insignificance. You need certain aspects of it. Do you ever feel like there are certain songs that end up, when you hear it's like, okay, I need this, and this to happen, and that's my kind of version of that song?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
What would be a song? What's one example of a song where you would have that?
Ooh, that's a really good one. Corduroy for me, especially the last part before you get to the solo. If Ed really gets into it and the band kind of like steps back just to let Ed just play the riff intro again, and then you get that explosion in your face. That's what I need. That could be an example that I can give you.
Yeah, solid example for sure. I think Insignificance is one of those songs where there's certain bits and pieces of it that I need to be hooked right away, or else I'm not feeling it. And in this one, the hook obviously comes from that first chord in the intro. Like, that first chord's supposed to sound sharp. You have 3 guitars going. And if you can't make that jump right from the start, then it's going to lack a little bit of the power. I don't know if we got the full extent of what this song can be, because maybe it was Ed's guitar that I felt was a little off or something like that, but it just, something was a little bit flat in the intro. The rest of the song, I think, ended up pretty fine, but again, little perfectionist things that it's like, oh, I love this song because of this, and this. And there are other parts of Insignificance that I absolutely need and love about that song too, which they nail in this, like the pause in the middle, for sure, that's a big moment. The build up going into the big Matt fill at the end, I thought that they did a tremendous job on that, and Stone's little lead into that sounded great too. But I think the intro, kind of like a little bit what we talked about with the down-tuned songs, where right away it needs to hook you with that sound that you're familiar with. It didn't do it on this version. I was a little disappointed.
And I think what it makes sense too is, and I totally get your point, but now if you start to look down in the set, maybe that's when the guitar started to fail. Because then we have Why Can't I Touch It? And then we have Immortality, where he has a technical issue and he has to request a different instrument. Maybe that is something that he was already experiencing in significance. Because I agree, like that first intro, you need that punch. That note needs to be something that is going to hook you up right away, and it didn't have that. But it could be a technical issue because then he ended up switching the instrument once we get to Immortality.
Did not even put two and two together there, but that makes a whole lot of sense now that you mentioned it. Okay. All right, we're cooking with some gas here. I don't feel stupid. I don't feel like adult, so,
You're
no
not
more
adult.
adulting.
No
We're
more
only
adulting.
adulting, not regular adulting.
When maybe Ed's guitar was adulting.
It
why I
sounds
don't
like
work.
it. Sounds
Yeah.
like kind of adult, but
Can we make that
Anyway.
like a verb, like adulting? I don't know.
adulting. Sure, we can do whatever we
Yeah.
want. We're podcasters. People listen to us.
Yeah,
We're
adult.
like
Okay, yeah.
authorities on all things adulty. Like, don't let
Insult-
anybody else
ins-
tell you who adult is. We'll tell you who the adults are.
Yeah, adulty and salty. Sounds like a really good name for a snack.
There are a lot of people, I'm sure, that are really fucking confused by why we keep saying that word, but I'm telling you, you can even ask me. There's a purpose for it. So we move on, and we move on to maybe one of my favorite moments of this show that, again, because of the guitar difficulties, didn't quite hit the way that I would have liked it to. So the intro to this song, to Immortality, is Why Can't I Touch It? And that is a Buzzcocks song. We haven't talked about the Buzzcocks and being the Manchester band too much in here, but the Buzzcocks are one of my favorite punk bands, always have been. If you want to go back, we've talked about the Deprogram podcast, and we've done so many bands on that podcast, and the Buzzcocks were done last year, and it's one of my favorites. It's just such a great listen front to back. And this song, Why Can't I Touch It, is already in the Pearl Jam canon because back in 2003, the Buzzcocks ended up opening for Pearl Jam for a couple of shows. So what they did was they would play Wish List, and then they would tag the "If it feels so real, I can feel it." Like they would do that at the end of Wish List, and it became a pretty big moment. I think a lot of people would recognize that off of the Live at the Garden DVD. So in this, instead of making that a tag, they actually play the song. They legitimately play the song. The bass comes in, very recognizable bass part, and the song itself is like 6 minutes long or something like that. It's a pretty long song where they keep doing kind of a similar bit to it, but it's such a great song and keeps building with that anticipation. They only do one go around here before leading into Immortality.
And it seems so real, I can hear it. So can I touch it? So can I touch
Of course, it could have been a massive moment and could have been something that we talk about to this day if Ed's guitar just got through one more song on Immortality, because it shits the bed. You can tell it's out of tune. Like, you might be able to explain better what happened than I can.
Yeah, it sounded like it was out of tune. Maybe there was some sort of coiling issue with the pickup, but it felt that it was not giving you the juice that you needed. And actually, when you're making that very long, beautiful intro, I thought that you were talking about Got Some.
You're an asshole. That's it. You're fired.
Instead of Immortality, I was like, wow, he's got some now. Yeah, for me, sound wise, it sounded like, well, the guitar is out of tune, but it sounded like the pickup is not giving you the take that you need. So it could be, and that's something that it will happen to an instrument that is being very, very used, especially in road conditions, because guys, a guitar pickup is just a bunch of magnets and wire. It's nothing more than that. So it will fail.
Fail it does, and Ed says, as much as it tries, that guitar will never be as good of a friend to me as this one. And I think it's just another one of his Telecasters. So we are prevented from getting something pretty fantastic, and we are settling for something that is a pretty cool concept, ruined by a random act of the musical gods, unfortunately. Bummer, and I wish that maybe they would have thought about that again last year in Manchester, but I think that there was other things on their mind at that show that had nothing to do with Buzzcock's stuff, even though we did get a Buzzcock related thing in their poster. You're going to have to look that up. I'm not going to share that with you because I want you to look up the poster from this past year's Manchester show and see how it relates to the Buzzcocks. So I'm going to let you do a little homework on that, people. Now, for the version of Immortality, it won't go down as anything close to like legendary status, especially the last two that we've covered on the pod the last 2 weeks have been just, I mean, all timer type versions. But even without that, we still do pretty well here. The jam starts out fairly subdued, but it has this slow rise and it kind of fills in as Cameron starts to push, and he's more along the lines of working the cymbals than working the toms on this. So it has that approach and it kind of really pushes and has a good final ending at the end of it. But what did you take away from this version of Immortality?
It is good. The ending is very solid, but I like it because I feel that there is a song in this version specifically that it was kind of like going in one direction, but they were readdressing it at the end and being more intense than what I was expecting to. Because when it started, it felt that maybe there was something missing, but then ended up being like this really good version, which it's, well, in my opinion is biased, Randy. Like, we have had really good versions of Immortality lately, so I feel that I can't gauge this one. But it's good, but I feel that there's not up to the standard that we have been commenting in the past couple of weeks, you know?
I think maybe the failed guitar probably puts a little bit of doubt into them. Sometimes that happens where something didn't work, they have to redo a song, and then you get into the song, it's like, okay, well, they're out of it. And it's not to say that they were completely out of it for this version, but it didn't have the touch. They said, why can't I touch it? And they couldn't quite touch other versions of Immortality with this one. So, but that's okay. Again, these are hiccups that you get at tour openers. It just happens sometimes. I think we had that this past year with Red Mosquito, if I'm not mistaken, right? They fucked up the intro to that.
Yep.
So, yeah, and then they almost forgot where to play Chloe Crown. So this shit happens. Not holding it against them at all. The way you're going to end your main set is the aforementioned Got Some, which apparently I had already talked about, so we don't have to talk about again. And the closer is Why Go. You know, overall, going into this main set, I thought that the back half was a tad bit underwhelming, and maybe it's because of the last couple versions and, you know, the failed guitar and everything like that. But again, a lot of it is getting the kinks worked out and figure what you got to work with and kind of work within the sound of the arena. And, you know, who knows what other factors are at play. But as the show would go on, as the show got into the encores, I think it kind of thrived a little bit more. But yeah, I didn't have a whole lot to say on either Got Some or Why Go, because they're both pretty okay, but nothing sparked me as having an it quality from either of those songs.
Yeah, and besides the tone being super hunky, because these guys were kind of like switching back and forth in between amps, trying to figure it out, because it's night one. I mean, you're trying to figure it out what it works for you. It's a version that for me feels that it's not very tied up. It's kind of like there are five guys playing their instruments, but you don't hear Why Go as a band, which is unfortunate because it's a really good song, right? But there's a little something missing here for sure.
There is, but we will find something when it comes to the encore. I think everything develops and blossoms pretty well. So that's where we are. Let's pause for station identification. Let's take a little bit of a break. And again, talk about what we got going on Patreon, what we got going on elsewhere. So last week I came on here and I begged and pleaded and said, guys, we are still looking for our first patron of the year. I thought we had it, and then it was just somebody that was re-upping. So we don't have our first patron of 2025 just yet, but I hope that you guys listening in would pitch in. Love to listen to some of the extra content over on our Patreon platform, like evolution episodes we've done in the past and late night series episodes that we've done in the past. And, now we're getting into territory where we need to get more modern era live on Four Legs episodes with you, Javier, on Patreon. And we've talked about some things. The evolution episodes were so difficult to get done. And I think the bulk of when we did that happened to be when COVID was so prevalent. So we were able to have more time to really research and put some work into it. And outside of that, we maybe did like 3 or 4 a year, which didn't feel like a lot. It's very time consuming, but we've been trying to come up with other ideas where we can do in-depth looks into songs that maybe we don't have to look at an entire catalog, so to speak. So that's an idea. Obviously, Gear Garages are your baby here, and we're going to talk about Gear Garage real soon for the next episode. I haven't gotten those emails, guys. We've talked about, hey, pitch Javier your ideas. Javier, you want to sell them? What are we doing next?
I'm waiting. So we were talking about okay, so we have a few songs that they are not being played very often. Which ones are those songs that you guys think, and why do you think that they're not being played very often? And we'll go through a few of them. Just Your Goal is one, because I know that Randy is pretty intrigued about that one. What was the other one that we were talking last week? I forgot. Get Right, of course. Get Right. And you know what? There's no way that it's month number 2 in 2025 and we haven't gotten a new patron.
I know.
If you're a guitar player out there, listen this. Free guitar lesson if you're the first one for 2025.
Whoa, incentive.
And a few pickups.
I love it. I'll throw in some stickers too. How about that?
Yeah, stickers, guitar picks, and a lesson. Then when you just contact me through social media and we'll figure it out. Or if there's a specific song that you want to learn and I can help you with, let's throw that out there. We need to get that first one for 2025.
Okay. All right. Something's on the line now, guys. So if you want to pitch in, the way to do it is to go to patreon.com/live on four legs. The other way to do it is to download the Patreon app and search for Live on Four Legs. Or the other way that helps us out the most probably is to go to liveonfourlegs.com and go to the top and click the Become a Patron button, and that'll get you there as well. And yeah, content is going to come in so many different facets. I think this week I'll probably start putting a first look to the new setlist Hangman episodes that we have. I've been working on that the past week. We do have a Horizon Leg profile episode for Jared Smith Schaefer, who I know is listening because he's always listening, and that is an inside joke for that episode. So you can listen to that at some point in the next week or two. I'll have that together. And if you know Jared and you've seen him on social media before, and you would like to hear Jared sing a karaoke version of Hotline Bling sung as a pharmacist trying to get you to take a flu shot, then boy, do we have the episode for you. Because it might be one of the greatest things we've ever had in a profile episode before. So,
priceless. It's absolutely priceless.
Yep. So that should be a lot of fun. Again, Gear Garages, and we need to have that big meeting, and maybe this is like an open house meeting where we can get all of the listeners to come in and be like, hey, I think you guys should do this. I think you guys should do this. Sometimes those are complete disasters, and sometimes they're really helpful, and we can brainstorm off of that. But, we are open to ideas, so if you do have things that you do want to hear us talk about, we do get ideas pitched to us all the time, and there is so much time to do content. But again, that's going to be something that we'll keep in mind as we go forward. And I haven't brought this up to you yet, but one of the things that I thought about is that we can do like a 10-minute recording of like a preview of what's to come for an episode and release that on Monday so they'll kind of have an idea on Wednesday, okay, this is what we're in for, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
That's easy.
Oh, easy. Yeah. Yeah. Why not? Let's just do that.
There you go, guys. There's another piece of Patreon that if you want to join up, that might be in the future what you get. Also, I'm going to throw this out there because this is a Patreon requested episode. And if you do want one of your favorite shows covered on this podcast, the best way to do that is to join up through the Giggle Leg tier or the Horizon Leg tier. And that will get you just that. Make sure that you're committed for a whole entire year, and we will get you a requested episode 100%. And you know what? There's a lot of holes this year in the schedule. I've been keeping it pretty open for reasons just like this, for people that want to join up and get their episode request in, because a lot of the people like Matt, he's probably been a patron for a while now. It's taken us a while to get to everybody's because we had so many people donate. So now we're finally caught up, and hey, we can talk to our longtime patrons and see which ones they want to do for a second choice. Just going to throw that out there. So, all right. I think we have talked enough about that. So back to the rock we go. Ed's got a bottle here and does a special toast to the back. Says I usually get pretty healthy on tour. The doctors and scientists all agree that a bottle of red wine a day is healthy for you. Oh, wait. It's a glass? Yeah, well, fuck that. I'm sure you're the same way, Javi, being the wine connoisseur that you are.
I don't know where a bottle daily will take me, but maybe on vacation I can experiment. But I think it will be a little too much. So I think Ed's pushing it right now. But I think a glass is okay.
I mean, tour Ed is basically vacation Ed, and then when Ed goes to Hawaii, that's vacation Ed. And then when Ed goes home and doesn't have to do anything band-wise, that's probably vacation Ed too. So there's probably a lot of bottles that have, dropped.
He's
to the
forgiven.
ground.
He's forgiven. Yeah.
So he says here, I'd like to dedicate this one to a couple back home. I couldn't play it for their wedding, but I told them we'd play it the first place we'd play here in Manchester, so I dedicate it to them. So this is to Liz and Tim, who got married last week, and also to Liz and Simon, part of our crew, who just got married a few months ago. So here's to all the newlyweds and all of the men who married someone named Liz. I mean, Richard Burton married 2 women named Liz, so it must be good. And he says, stay newlyweds forever. Just Breathe and Black are going to be the 2 packaged here together. At this point, Jeff was completely removed from the song, and it's a bummer because that makes the song move, that gives the song its beauty, its presence, his bass line. And instead, you kind of just have Mike there giving like little pieces of texture that without him, I don't think you'd even really notice that he was there or not. Like, he's not involved on recent versions of Just Breathe. When they played Just Breathe last year, Mike's not on stage. And I bet you'd barely even notice that little bit that he does. It's just really a dum, 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 dum. It's not much at all. But I think we've just kind of been like, the react to the respond on that, just reacting like, how could they do that? And yeah, it's kind of terrible that we don't get to see Jeff in this because it is the best part of the song, but also responding might be what they want to get out of Just Breathe without him that makes the song work. And I'm wondering if somebody down the line, probably it would be Ed, and again, speculation time, but never the worst thing in the world, if he had thought at one point that maybe the bass made it feel a little bit too bouncy when he wanted to be a little more heartfelt. Does that make sense?
it's kind of hard for me to imagine that a song is going to feel heartfelt with that bass line that he adds to it, which is a great bass line. I agree with you, but maybe that's something that he didn't need at that point for that version of the song that he wanted to present. Who knows? But it sucks because it's just like that's the song that people fell in love with, and it doesn't have a bass line skipped in the original recording. So I just hopefully it'll come back because I miss it. I miss it, and I want to talk about Just Breathe, and I'm not going to talk about Just Breathe till we get the Jeff bass line.
It's a storyline that'll always continue on this podcast, but unfortunately for you, in order to get that, we have to go to the dreaded year that you hate so much.
I'll do it. I'll do it.
You choked up there. You didn't want to say.
Fuck. Shit. Yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll go back to it. Yes.
2009 month coming in March, ladies and gentlemen. All 2009 shows. Nothing else.
Can't fucking wait.
But we can talk about something a little bit more palatable here, and that would be this version of Black. I thought it breathed, I thought it just breathed, to throw a pun in, a ton of life back into this show. And it really feels like when Mike wasn't coming through on something like Even Flow or Why Go, where he just felt like he was kind of out of the mix or not in front of the mix, it felt like he was in the forefront in Black. And that's what you absolutely needed overall at this show. You needed for Mike to have the breakthrough. And this has the thing that we love the most, or the thing that at least I love the most. He's using the vacuum, the Hoover.
The vacuum is back. By the way, hey, shout out to Travis. Travis, let me know if the organ setting from the POG 2 works. If you guys have a POG out there, and if you want to try this sound, the setting is the pipe organ or the church organ, I think it's called. But that will do it for you if you want to get into that Black 2012, 2014 era, or even if you want to experiment with Temple of the Dog stuff. So it will do it for you. But the vacuum is back, and I love the freaking vacuum when he uses it.
Packaged together songs are State of Love and Trust and Arms Aloft. I thought State of Love and Trust was a lot of fun coming off of that. I think that Black really sets the tone for the next couple songs. It's a pretty strong encore one. I think Matt definitely came through pretty hard at the end of State of Love and Trust, and it's a very fun version of this song that I love to hear in the encore. But following that being Arms Aloft is very interesting because you don't think of Arms Aloft being an encore song. And what's fascinating about this song just in general is that it's one of these songs that Pearl Jam decided to cover. Joe Strummer song, Mescalero song. And it's not a Clash song. So not a lot of people are going to know it going into like the first couple times that they play the song until it starts to get a little bit wider spread. So Arms Aloft is never gonna be like, if you have a casual crowd or even the hardcores might not gravitate towards it that much, it's not one of those songs that people are going to be like, wow, yes, we're hearing that. Like as a whole, there are individual people for sure that would feel that way, but it does feel a little random at first. There's going to be a story attached to it as to why it's a little less random, but I will just throw out there, I've seen this song twice, and for it to be song number 2 at the first night at PJ 20 was just one of the weirdest choices that I can remember. Think about this. Corduroy was not played at PJ 20. either night, and they decided to go with Arms Aloft over Corduroy. A bit of a weird decision. However, I want to throw this out there. I do like the song, and I thought that this version sounded pretty good, and I thought that they were on top of it. So, because it's, not typically one of those standard encore tunes, that it throws you off a little bit, but if you're just thinking about performance-wise, it absolutely fits in.
Especially because you set the tone with Black so much that you need that kind of like pick me up kind of stuff. So State Arms Aloft is good, but I'm so used to hear Arms Aloft in the like very, very beginning side of the set too. So for me, this was kind of like, interesting. And it's such a rare thing that they just chose to cover. God knows why, but when they get it right, they get it right. And it's a really good song, but sometimes you're going to hear maybe one show here and there that's not fully down yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, again, there's a reasoning behind it. So he says, I don't know how many of you knew that last one, but it is a Joe Strummer song, and I've been thinking about him a lot lately. He left us too early at the age of 50. It's already been a long time, and we listen to his music all the time, so it doesn't seem long. I currently am looking at my record player, and the record that I have up right now is Given Enough Rope. Phenomenal Clash record. So here's to Joe, and we're just thinking about him. A little thing that I remember one show happening, and it just kind of sparks my mind when he's talking about this, is that the Mescalaros, I believe, were supposed to be like a European tour opener for them. I believe it was supposed to, because he died, I think, in 2002. So it mentioned this at some show that it seemed like it was in 2003 they were supposed to do a European tour, is what he alluded to, and said that Joe Strummer was supposed to open up. And when they found out that he passed away, because I believe he passed away on like Christmas Eve, and Ed's birthday is the day before on Festivus, he's talked about it before that he felt, that was something that kind of stood out. So Joe Strummer is extremely important to Ed's origin story when it comes to his getting involved in music, and also him meeting Jack Irons is through Joe Strummer. So that's extremely important when it comes to this whole entire band developing. So Ed's then mentioning here, he says, before we start the next one, something else of very tragic nature happened a few days ago. There was an accident at a venue in Toronto at a Radiohead show before they went on to play. They lost a crew member, and if they're anything like us, this crew is our family, and I'm sure it's the same for them. It's been a few days, and we can't stop thinking about it, so we're sending all of our love and support during this difficult time. I can't say that I remembered this when he was talking about it, and it feels like 2012 is one of those years where, it's a dime a dozen. Like, it just kind of walk through it, that I was working every day and like didn't really have much of a life to myself. So anything that happened in 2012, I'm like, yeah, you can tell me something happened, and I'm probably like, you're probably right. And this must have slipped past my mind because I don't remember this incident at all. But like looking it up, it's a really sad story. So the drum technician's name was Scott Johnson, and he was killed. A couple other road crew members were injured prior to them starting the show in Toronto. So this was like right before soundcheck was supposed to take place at 2 p.m. And it seemed like one of Radiohead's managers noticed that scaffolding on the stage appeared to be drooping, and nobody really did anything about that. So when it came to 4 o'clock, an hour before the gates were open, the stage roof collapsed. And as Philip Selway said, it sounded like an enormous cabinet of glasses falling over, and it immediately killed Scott Johnson, their drum tech. What Ed's saying is totally true. Yeah, they're not members of the band, but really they are members of the band. They all travel together, and especially with Pearl Jam, everybody's been with this band for years. And I mean, not just like 5 years, but like 30 years. So everybody knows everybody, everybody loves everybody. You know, as we mentioned, two of their crew members got married at this time period. Yeah, it's just such a tough thing to have happen while you're on tour. I can't fathom what the guys in Radiohead and their crew went through at that time period. Do you remember this happening?
Actually, Randy, I do. It was one of the things that you just caught on the news, but I remember because apparently at the beginning they were thinking that there was some sort of like malfunctioning in the structure of the thing, and then they ended up discovering this because this thing was basically not designed to hold the weight that the equipment was putting on over the structure, and they ended up determining that there was like a professional misconduct thing like out of the engineering firm, which it's sad. If you ever had the opportunity of like being in a live stage where like you don't know how much these people are going to be doing in the back for you, helping you with your instruments, cables, whatever, and especially those relationships that you build over time. These guys are like the B band, you know, something misses, something happens. So it's a very, very, very unfortunate incident. And I'm glad that Radiohead was like big enough to just to manage it in the right way and decided just to properly pay the respects later on, which they did.
Yeah, and it says here specifically that Radiohead had told their crew that if they needed to leave tour to, you know, deal with things, they could, but everybody stayed behind. And I think that's telling. That's a sign of everybody being there for one another as family. That's a good thing. And something I'll say about Pearl Jam's crew, I got the pleasure to be able to see them after a show break down their set, because in St. Louis, I was kind of waiting in the seats to figure out whether or not I was going to go backstage because I did have a pass. I didn't, but that whole entire time I was sitting with two of my friends and I'm like, this is okay. Because we were there for like 40 minutes or so and we got to see how efficient this crew is in breaking down the set. And it was an amazing sight to behold. If you want to see this, hide under some seats at the end of a show and go and make sure you witness this, or any band, not just Pearl Jam, but I'm sure that any band's crew, they're all dying to get out of there. So they're just quick. I mean, they took those screens down. It felt like they were gone in 3 seconds. You know what I mean? It was just incredible work. So, I mean, the crews work night and day so hard for these bands, and you just got to throw them the bone. They deserve all of it.
Miles before I go to sleep. If you want to dig down on what these guys do, please watch that documentary. It's outstanding.
All right, we're getting a main set closer here, and it might be the best performance of the night, or one of them. It's another big solo moment, and once again, you're kind of still in that mode like Even Flow, where Mike is not up front in the mix, but Stone fucking Gossard is. At first, Stone is just kind of playing something with a little rhythm, but a lot of pick-me-up on it, while Mike is just like furiously soloing away. And it turns into, okay, well now Stone is soloing, and now Stone is like really into this, and they're both going off at the same time, and then Mike kind of takes a step back a little bit and plays like a more rhythmic-based riff while Stone is going off. And it's one of those things that, I mean, when you're so talented like they are, it can naturally happen where you can just kind of go one into the other and understand what somebody's doing in the back of your hand and be like, okay, well, this is the direction that I need to take if Stone's going to take that, because Stone's the highlight right now, and Mike does a great job of redirecting. I mean, that is teamwork to me, because sometimes, you know, that there are lead guitarists out there that's like, don't steal my moment, I'm the guy. But there's never been that sort of hierarchy in this band, and it's just like, if you got something, I'm going to let you do something. I think that lets everybody in on the moment, and it was fantastic in Porch.
the feedback that they get is just back and forth, and they bounce and they play out of the other one, and it's great, and especially because it's so cool because their styles are so different, but when Mike riffs over whatever Stone is doing, it's just like it adds so much dynamic to the song. Like, it's a really good version. The band is completely on fire in this one. Cameron is giving you everything you need in the back, same thing with Jeff. Now if you want to watch a band that like you want to have a 20 minutes per song, go watch Greta Van Fleet. That's what you're gonna get.
No thanks, I'm good. I don't think I need to watch them. I actually purposefully did not watch them at Bourbon and Beyond. I walked away. So Porch finishes here. I'm going to throw Boom a little bit of a bone too. I thought he was providing some great texture onto that, like especially like leading up to them building into the chorus. I thought he sounded fantastic. This is a big finish too, and we really truly needed a big song here, something electrifying that is going to rub off on the rest of the set. So Encore 2. Ed quickly thanks the local people who helped set up and the crew and their family. Again, he's giving more bones to the people that helped put this together, so that is firmly on his mind. And then he thanks X for opening up for them. We got Better Man, and then we're going to do Comeback and Jeremy. I don't have too much on Better Man. I think it was a fine version. Good energy, good crowd, totally into it. All the elements are intact for what makes this song work so well live, and it seemed like Ed was having a blast playing it with a ton of windmills, but I think the story of this encore probably comes with Comeback. So let's transition into that if you don't mind. So Ed says, I asked this gentleman before if he had a request and asked him if he'd be here tomorrow. He said yes, but we're going to play it tonight just in case anything happens in the meantime. Because life is fragile. If you're here, you have a request, I think we should play it now. Guaranteed. So Comeback gets played. Jeremy gets played right after it. But I want to bring this up about Comeback because it must be one of those songs that, like, I'm a little surprised that they took it as a request, because usually when they put it in the set, there's a purpose for it. There's a reason. They're playing it because they know somebody that is going through something specific. And it's one of those moments where, okay, everybody put their phones out and put their flashlight on, the fireflies and all that, and you get to have a moment with it. It feels like maybe mentally they would put it in a set to be able to kind of understand, all right, this is where this is going to happen, so it doesn't come up on them like this, where it's just like, all right, now we're going to do this in Encore 2, we're going to change things up. Obviously, it doesn't really throw them off or anything like that, but the emotional weight that this song represents, and you also have to think if somebody is requesting this, it's for a pretty damn important reason, because it's not, Comeback is not one of these songs where it's like, I really like Comeback, can you play it? No, it's like, my fucking sister died, and this song is making me cry every day. It's shit like that, and I don't mean to like sound gruff when I say that, but it's the truth. That's what the song is dealing with. That's how you cope through this song. More power to them for being able to do that, to kind of come off the fly and be like, all right, we're going to take one of our most emotional songs and do it for this fan who's obviously hurting.
Yeah, a lot of respect for that, because you can tell that emotionally it takes a lot from the band too. And just the fact that they were brave enough just to grab that request and just play it, it says volumes about them. I mean, how many examples can we give you of stuff that they have done like this? But something that I would like to point out too is Mike gives you a master class of how to use a wah pedal in this song. Because a lot of people think that the wah is just like in how it sounds, right? Like wah wah. But there's so many nuances and so many different tones in between that foot down and foot up position that it's just sublime. So just listen to it, because honestly, it just gives you so many different tones that it's just absolutely amazing. It's just one little thing, then he will just find the right spot and he will play it for you. It's outstanding.
It's okay. It's okay.
Jeremy in with Alive and Rockin' in the Free World here. Big hits, big way to close out your night. And I think really the highlight for me out of the three is probably Rockin' in the Free World, because once again, you get the MVP of this show, which I believe firmly is Stone Gossard. I think that Matt and Jeff definitely have their moments as well. But we talked about it a couple shows ago. I believe it was the Ottawa show where Stone destroys the Neil Young songs. And once again, his solo here for another Neil Young song, he fucking slaughters it. I'll have to mention here too, this version does include John Doe singing some background vocals, so that's cool to get him on stage. I believe he was doing this a lot as they were touring with him, and I know that was special to Ed. So, yeah, I mean, like, some great moments that happened in Rockin' in the Free World. And Alive has the War Pigs tag too, so you get a little bit of that, but also the feeling of this show isn't, oh man, we're saying goodbye. But again, it's that cliffhanger. It's like, we're done for now, but hang on to that point and we'll see you tomorrow night.
Yeah, we got Stone, Neil, Gossard, Young in this one. Yeah, he's slaying through this. But it's pretty cool that you get that feeling of like, okay, we're getting ready for you guys for night two, and it leaves you hanging. But really good closers, Alive, Rocking, they complement back to the other one. So I think it was the right selection of songs just to close out a night one, especially in a tough night like it could be like a tour opener for them.
Yeah, I wonder how they felt after this one. I mean, they definitely went back and said, all right, if we're going to do one of the rare, we're going to do it tomorrow night. So they must have been feeling pretty good about the crowd and how the crowd felt. But yeah, this is an interesting show. And it definitely ends stronger than maybe you would have thought when listening to certain points in the show. So a very strong ending, but as we'll get to with the rating, we'll talk about that more and expand on that. So we're here to give 3 moments for this show now, and that's what we'll do. So I'm going to give it to you. What do you got?
My number 3 is going to be Comeback. My number 2 is going to be Porch. And my number 1 is going to be Half Full.
Okay. So I think I have one shared here, but I'll start with Corduroy at number 3 due to Machine Gun Matt Cameron with his Filthy Fills. And then number 2, I'm going to give the credit because I love the song. I love the band so much. Even though it didn't quite work out, I still really love the involvement of Why Can't I Touch It. So yeah, it's more of because of a concept, but I love that they did it anyway. And I get what they were going for, but still, I'll throw some respect on it. And number 1 is going to be Porch to me because I thought Porch was the absolute showstopper of this show. All right, now we're going to have to pick a rating here, and I think it'll be interesting to kind of see where this falls. So what do you have?
For me, this is a show that I struggle with being engaged with, but I understand that this is night 1 of a new leg of a band that I haven't played a lot lately. So for me, it's an 8. I think there's some stuff missing, but I'm comfortable with an 8. I think it's a very fair assessment.
A 7 on this show. I think it lacks some major moments that you can take out of it. And like if you're going through and doing like the best of the year, you'd find a couple of things, but I don't think you're going to have stuff that are top 10 worthy from this show. I think this is, again, and it's in a position that is difficult because you're kicking things off and you're seeing what's what, and you're working through some obvious challenges within the amps and everything like that you talked about, but it's average. It's very solid. You can get through it fine. But I think that maybe because it's the first one, that some of the strength it should have had was a little bit kind of left off the table. And maybe at night 2, whenever we get a chance to listen to that to finally cross Hitchhiker off, maybe that's a little bit different. Maybe we get to see the band at what their full potential is, but I don't think they quite hit that at the show. So a 7 is what we're going to mark in the books for this one. Okay, that is a wrap for that. So why don't we talk about what we're going to do next week? This being an anniversary year for so many different tours, I mean, legendary tours, one of the ones that we cannot help but cover for the whole entire year to probably get in at least like 5 shows from this year is that 2005 Canadian tour. And we've covered a bunch from this run, but I mean, there's a ton that I would love to get to, like a Kitchener, like a Thunder Bay, like St. John's, Halifax. This one that we're going to get to, it's another Patreon request from our patron Jeff, and we're going to do the Montreal show that happens in a very, very strong run around the same time as that Ottawa show. Toronto show, I think, was the night before this. So it was during a good time for Pearl Jam. So I think we are going to get excited for a very, very highly regarded show for next week, Montreal 2005, the 20th anniversary of that tour. Okay. You excited about that?
I'm excited for 2005. That's a good run.
Yeah, one of my favorites for sure. Just everything was on the table. The kitchen sink tour, and the stories coming out of that too, and it just being the first time that they did the country from west to east is just, I mean, one of the cool little tours that they've done in their history. I mean, they could do the US until they turn blue, and they have, but to do full length of Canada was just something real special. So Montreal, usually a venue that they would go to no matter what the year is, probably, but like a lot of other places that are on that tour just never even sniff Pearl Jam again. So we'll hopefully get to a couple of those once the year goes by, but next week will be Montreal. All right. So if you like what you heard today and you're interested in this podcast, please make sure that you are subscribed on any of your favorite podcast platform, whether that be Apple, Spotify, YouTube, whatever it is. Make sure you're subscribed so you know when our episodes come out, because yeah, our episodes come out Wednesday, but you never know when there's going to be extra shit. We might put some out. Who knows? And if you're over on those platforms, make sure that if there's a rating system that you can give us a rating. Hopefully we have earned the 5 stars. If my voice isn't annoying, that is. Some people don't think that my voice deserves the 5 stars, but you know what? It's about the content, and it's about the stories that we put together and everything like that. So if my voice is annoying, but the content is good, I'll take that. And if that's worthy of your 5 stars, I'll happily run with it. So you can do that on any of those platforms. You can also comment, let us know what you think. Don't be an asshole, because life's too short to be an asshole. Just be. If you have something to say, then be kind. Because, again, life's too short. You don't want to make anybody else unhappy. And if you don't like it, walk away. Listen to something that you do like. I don't care. It's fine. I'm not bothered by it. I watch content all the time and I say, you know what? I don't like that guy, so I'm not going to watch his content anymore. I mean, we certainly hope that you like us. We hope that we're doing a good job. And we hope that we're giving you what you want out of this band, because it is extremely special to us. So if we've done that, if we've told the stories, if we brought Matt back to his favorite moments of the show, then we've accomplished what we've accomplished today. And it doesn't matter if somebody doesn't like my voice or thinks that I'm adult. What matters is that we've preserved some amazing memories. So I'll take that as a victory any day of the week. All right. That's the end of this one. This may be the end. We're here, but not for much longer. And although we may be parting ways, miss you already, miss you always. So now that football is over, and I know all of you Eagles fans must be so happy, jumping off light poles and whatever you guys do when you win stuff, now we can focus on the one sport that matters over everything else: baseball. It's baseball season finally. We're excited about that, and you know, with me with my references, I'll keep bringing them up. I don't mind. Maybe we'll get some Expos talk into next week. Until then, see you on the pod.
Spira Carpets, the Chemical Brothers, Joy Division, the Stone Roses, Oasis.